Welcome to class tonight. We have been looking the last couple of weeks, and we have been studying the names of the Lord under the title of Jehovah. God has several different names that that are applied to Him in the Old Testament. There are three primary names for God in the Old Testament, which are what?
El, Adonai, and Jehovah.
El, Adonai, and Jehovah. Very good. El is the strong one, and then Adonai is master or Lord, and then Jehovah means what? It's his personal name. Very good, which means
self-existing one.
And I am the existing one. Very good. We've gone through El, we've gone through Adonai. We are on Jehovah. For those who were able to be here last week, we looked at Jehovah Jireh, and we talked about the Lord that provides, how He provides salvation, and how He has provided redemption in His Son, how that God provides for and meets all of our needs at every moment in time. Tonight we are going to be talking about Jehovah Nissi. I'm going to write that on the board because it is not spelled the way you think it sounds. That's Jehovah, Jehovah, Nissi, Nissi. That's not how I spell Nissi, but that's the way it is spelled in the Hebrew, and so that's how it is spelled. It is pronounced Jehovah Nissi. It means the Lord is my banner. Banners were very important. If you've ever seen movies, war movies that featured like in the old Roman Empire type days, or even back in the days of the Canaanites and the Israelites way back when, just think about the Roman army for a minute. When an army marched into battle, the soldiers carried what? Banners.
Weapons.
Very good. Weapons. Okay. What else?
Armor.
Armor. Okay. Generally speaking, the soldier, he'd wear his armor. He had a weapon, which would be a sword. And the Romans had long swords, short swords, spears, daggers, but just saying offensive weapon, a sword. They had a shield. That was defensive. And then armies also carried banners. Banners served two purposes in those days. Really, you can possibly three if you want to call it that. But number one, banners identified. They identified, banners are what identified people. Different armies carry different banners. If two armies came on the battlefield, they didn't both have the same banner. That would have been they were fighting themselves. That's not the way that it worked. Different nations, different armies carried different banners. Banners generally had some type of identifying mark. This word for banner could also be translated as simply a standard. Especially in Roman days, at times they would carry like an animal head, or they would carry some type of sword or some type of just metal object that they considered their standard. It was their identifying mark. And so a banner is something that identifies. Secondly, it was I'm probably going to spell this wrong, but it was a rallying point, or a point of assembly. By that, when soldiers went into battle, this is just random numbers, but think about this for a moment. If you have 10 acres of land, you've got simple grassy fields, you've got rocky mountains, you've got maybe even a creek in the middle of it, and your army has 8,000 soldiers in it, you're fighting an army that has 10,000 soldiers in it. That means you've got 18,000 people in a 10-acre spread over various terrain. And amidst these 18,000 people, they're intermingled together, fighting each other with swords and spears. Okay. In all likelihood, somehow you're probably going to get confused, turned around, and probably get a bit jumbled up. Your lines aren't going to stay the same. If one part of the line got forward and got into enemy territory, they got cut off. They had to go back to the home point. They could see the banner. That would have been where they rallied to. Okay, my line's failing. I need to get back. I need to find safety. I have to retreat. Where do I go? Do I go this way, that way, or that way? I don't know. But then they could see the banner, and they would know that's my army. And so that's where they would rally to. That's where they'd go and they'd gather around. That's a military type example. There are also just civil means behind that as well. The banner would be raised in a town. A banner could be raised, and people would know this is where we're going to go, and we're going to assemble together, and we're going to meet, and we're going to have our meeting. Banners were very important, especially in the Old Testament days when it came to an army. It identified who the army belonged to, and it was the rallying point for the soldiers. Soldiers rallied behind, and they gathered around and behind the banner itself and what the banner stood for. Exodus chapter 17. We are going to be starting here in Exodus chapter 17. I've kind of gone through a little bit of the basics of what a banner is. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to read our text and we're going to discuss this and apply it a little bit. Exodus chapter 17, we're going to start in verse number 8. This is shortly after Israel has left Egypt and Exodus, and they're around Mount Sinai at that time. Exodus chapter 17, beginning in verse 8. This is the first battle between Israel and a foreign nation. This was the first nation actually to oppose Israel after the Exodus. 17 verse 8. Now Amalek came and fought Israel in Rephidim. And Moses said to Joshua, choose us some men and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses said to him, and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And so it was, when Moses held up his hand, that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. For Moses' hands became heavy. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and the other on the other side. And his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. So Joshua defeated Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, write this for a memorial in the book and recount it in the hearing of Joshua. I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and called his name, the Lord is my banner. That is Jehovah Nissi. For he said, because the Lord has sworn, the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Random historical fact. Who were the Amalekites? Anybody know?
They descendants of Lot?
Maybe.
Very good, but who was Amalek?
The Moabites and the Ammonites.
Okay, well,
They're
that
not
was a good
Amalek.
guess.
Amalek was a grandson of Esau. And so Amalek was actually a grandson of Esau. So these are Esau's great grandchildren from a long lost seed, so to speak. But the Amalekites are descended from Esau. And so this is the Amalekites, and they have come up against Israel. Israel has left Egypt. They're going about their travels. And we are told that they came to do battle, to do war against Israel. Moses, being the leader, he sent Joshua. By the way, this is the first reference to Joshua here. And Joshua, of course, becomes a very important leader and a very important figure in the remainder of the book of Exodus. And so, really, in the remainder of the rest of the Bible as well. And Joshua is told to go out. He leads the people. He leads a select group of men to go out and to do battle and to fight against Amalek. Now, this is where the banner comes into play. As Joshua was out fighting the battle, Moses stood on the hill. And as long as he held the banner, the rod of God high in the air, held his hand high, the army of Israel prevailed against Amalek. But his arm got tired and his arm began to fall, so Israel's army began to lose the battle. But as long as he held it up, they prevailed. It fell, Israel's army fell. Well, Aaron and Hur went up and they got a rock or a stone that they set his hand upon. And they helped him to stand there and to support the staff in the air until Joshua and the Israelites had thoroughly prevailed and defeated Amalek. And that's the basics of this story. Israel prevailed and they defeated Amalek because of, well, really the Lord won them the victory. As their banner, as Moses held up the rod of God in the air, they prevailed. The banner is held high and they prevailed. Now, Moses called the name of an altar there. He built an altar and he called the name of it, "The Lord is my banner," and Jehovah Nissi. He said, "The Lord is my banner." He is our standard. He's the one that leads us. He is the one that we belong to. And I think it's very important that we note that in verse 16, the reason he said, "The Lord is my banner," was because the Lord has sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Because, yes, they had won a battle against Amalek. They built an altar. But also it's to be a memorial of the fact that there's going to be continual wars to continue on for the next several generations. And so what Israel needed to remember, what they needed to know was as long as God was their banner, as long as he was held high, and as long as they followed his standard and his banner, they would prevail. Whenever they let that banner fall, they would fall as well. We need to understand that we are in an ongoing warfare. That's something that's very important to understand. That we need to hold the banner of the Lord high, and we need to do it on a continual basis. We are in ongoing warfare. If we let the banner fall, we fall as well. But before I get too far ahead of myself, it needs to be understood that as a child of God, we are indeed engaged in a spiritual warfare. That is something that we do not ever need to be forgetful of. Ephesians chapter 6. We are going to spend a few minutes here. In Ephesians chapter 6, this is a very well quoted passage of Scripture. It is what we commonly call the armor of God. In Ephesians 6 in verse 12, he identifies to us who it is we fight. Well, we're going to back up to verse 10. And in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 10, Paul says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand in the evil day, having done all to stand. Stand therefore, having girded your waist with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, with which you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, being watchful to this end, with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints." Number one, Paul identifies in verse 12 that we are waging a warfare, not against things that we see, not against the physical things here, but primarily it is a spiritual warfare. Really in verse 12, he's referencing the demonic and the forces that are at work here in this world. He lists a couple of different things: principalities, powers, and the rulers of the darkness of this age. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about and discussions about the different hierarchy that seems to be established here. But understand that he is talking about the demonic forces. Understand something. Who is the god of this world?
Satan.
Satan. Satan is the one in charge and that has power over this current world order and this current world system. Now, rest assured in the fact that when Jesus died upon Calvary, he crushed the head of the serpent, he defeated Satan. And Satan's world order is coming to a very swift and a very quick end. And Christ will once again restore the order to the way it was supposed to be. But as of this moment in time, this world order is still under the power of Satan. Sin reigns and sin has power here. The demonic forces are still at work. And they are the ones that we war against on a day-to-day basis. Understand something, that the demons and that Satan himself has no desire at all to see you as a child of God live your life in any way that reflects and honors God. He does not want to see anyone have a relationship with God whatsoever. Satan fell, and he will do everything within his power to ensure that others fall the same way that he did. If you're a child of God today, you are eternally secure, and you are eternally safe in the blood of Christ. We've talked about that many times in here. And Satan knows full well he can't take your salvation, but he does know he can take your testimony. He can take your witness away from you by causing you to fall into sin and fall into a lifestyle of sin. And when he does that, he takes away the light that you shine as a witness to others in the community. And so we are waging a spiritual warfare. Satan wages war against us and not using things that we would think of as outright attacks, but he's generally very subtle. He's deceptive. He generally attacks us with things that perhaps innately aren't even sinful or wrong, but that he takes them, he twists them in such a way that leads to sin. Understand that there are I'm going to use a stick person for a moment, and so pardon my terrible art, but I can't draw an actual person. We are raging a warfare. We are in a constant fight against many things. Some of the things that he might use against us would be those base desires that we have. A lot of the more common ones that we think of would be things like drugs or alcohol, the sexual desires that we have. Those are things that he uses against us. But inside marriage, this isn't wrong. Outside, it is. But he knows that as human beings, our sinful nature are drawn to those things, and he will do everything within his power to draw us away in those things. Those are obvious ones. But no, there's other things as well. You ever thought about that one? How often, how easy is it for stress to wear you down to the point that you don't really read anymore, you don't really pray anymore, and you don't even really want to go to church anymore? Stress can be very easily become something that deters and that keeps us away from serving God. Stress, anger. We can become upset, and hold grudges against people to the point that it just eats away and it just corrupts us inside, and it keeps us from being able to really worship or focus our hearts on anything near the holiness of God. These are just a few. I'm sure you can probably think of some more. Y'all think of anything else like around on this board?
Busyness.
Busyness.
Being under Satan's yoke.
Busyness. That's a terrible S. There's busyness. The drive to succeed. Money. That's a good one. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil.
Language, thoughts.
No, succeed.
These two, just
Well,
think
this
about
continues.
those two. How often do you just want to succeed? I think it's a very simple, very base desire. We want to be successful in this life. Is it innately wrong? No. The Bible talks a lot about what true success is, but how easy it is for Satan to say, well, if you want to get ahead, if you want to succeed, just do this little bitty white lie here and there on your tax returns, keep just a little bit of extra money. Just short these workers just a little bit of pay and you'll succeed. Just cheat a little bit here and there and you'll get ahead in life. Sleep with the right people, you get promoted in the company. Oh, there's a lot of ways you can get ahead, but most of them aren't right. Satan can use that to get ahead in many, many ways.